I wanted to ask a few questions. We don't have much time, but just to go a little bit about your other companies. I look at your resume. First question is a bit of a joke. I see that you are in biotech and in cemeteries. Are they related, or is it?
Well, I've been in my life as an entrepreneur in many different projects, and I've never been focused in one particular sector or in one particular area because I thought it was quite boring to do that. So once you know.
So how do you split your time? How do you?
Well, I'm basically dedicated to Thinkia, 100% of my time, or 85% of my time. But to answer that, the biotech company, it was kind of a good investment. I did on Australia with a Spanish investigator, and
You're saying they can't hear you speak into the microphone.
what? Okay, sorry. It was a project in which I funded a Spanish investigator in Australia, and we were seeking a particular way of generating plants that could use less water, and therefore would be more secure at the time of big droughts in countries like Australia, which they have lots of droughts normally. That was one of the projects, and another project was a way of delaying ripening of fruits, and basically we're working on papaya ripening, and it was a project that the problem with papaya is that it moves about 5 billion a year, and almost half of that production is made on personal farms, small farms, and most of the papaya grown on those personal farms. In the way to the personal farm to the place where they sell it, it ripens because of the temperature because of the weather of the different countries in which they grow. So we developed a plant that could delay ripening and control ripening of the papaya. So you could control at what time you were getting the papaya out of the tree, and you could sell it without losing it. So, because about 50% of the production it's lost on the way to the place where you sell it, and so it came to me as from this Spanish investigator that lives in Australia, and I did invest in that because I thought it was a very interesting, it was a very positive thing to do. I stayed in the company for 4 years or 3 years, and I basically finally sold it to the University of Queensland, which is the area in which it was based on Brisbane in Queensland, and I sold it to the university. And the cementerios of Tenerife, it's a funny story. It's my father-in-law who owns those cemeteries, and one day he came to me and said, "Look, I need someone to chair this company. So I'm just the chairman. I'm not an investor in the company." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, my wife doesn't like me to be the chairman of this company." And I said, "Well, my wife is your daughter." He said, "Well, you can handle that." And I'm not the chairman of the cemeteries anymore. I stayed for 5 years, and then I gave it back to him. Said, "Look, my wife is not happy too." So now he has a friend. It's a very good business, by the way. I mean, it makes a lot of money, and it was very funny.
No complaints from clients.
No. Let me tell you a very funny story about this. The guy has the cemeteries and this on the Canary Islands. And on Tenerife, in this particular company on Tenerife, there's a big volcano called the Teide, which is the biggest volcano in Spain, and it's still on live. I mean, and in year 2000, you probably may remember that there was a lot of talking about the end of the world arriving on the 1st of January of year 2000. So there was a huge group of people from the north of Europe, but about 300 people that went to Tenerife because they decided to commit suicide the 1st of January of year 2000. And so they flew to Canary Islands. It's a huge, 300 people, huge group. and they went into buses, and they were ready to jump into the. This is totally serious, and they were ready to jump with their kids and everybody, the whole family. Like, the world is going to be ending, so we jump and we die and everything is over. And the police stopped them before jumping. So I called my father-in-law. I said, God, I'm really sorry. And he was so pissed off. He said, I lost these 300 people.
Wait, one more question. I was curious when you were talking about this case in Ukraine. How did you came back after a failure like that? I mean, you come back to Spain, your story ends, but how do you overcome something like that? How do you, put yourself back together? How do you get funding for your next venture? How do you come back?
Well, I almost lost everything on that experience. And so it was later than the dates I was saying, because it was I finished in 1998. No, excuse me, 1993. 93, yeah. I almost lost everything at that time. So, but before, during the time I was doing that experience in Ukraine, I met a guy in Italy that was starting with a business that at that time sounded quite peculiar. He was renting mobile phones. Year 1992, 93, the mobile phones were like this big, about 4,000 euros per telephone, the cost. They were very, very expensive. So he started this business in Italy on renting them. And he came to me. We were friends. I mean, we were not friends. We had a common friend. I had this common friend in Italy, and he called me and said, look, I have this friend. He wants to start this franchise business in Spain, and would you like to talk to him? So he came to Madrid, and he explained to me the business, and I thought it could be a very interesting thing for the future. So I said, look, I started with you this. So we opened a shop in Madrid to see how things were going to work. And we bought like 10 telephones, and we started renting those phones. We call the business Viva Voce. And Viva Voce in Italian means hands-free. And so we put the name of Viva Voce on the shop, and so we started that shop. It worked quite well. So we opened a second shop. And at that time, I had this big failure. I had to sell everything I had at that time, except my house in Madrid that I could keep. And I could keep it just because it was mortgaged, so I couldn't give it to the people I was owing money. So I had to restart it, and the only thing I had at that time was those two shops. So I had to focus on, again, multitasking, the big mistake of thinking of multitasking. So I had to focus on the Viva Voce business. And that small two shops, after 9 years, I sold it to an English company, and when I sold the company, we were the biggest retailer in Spain, and we were selling about 11% of total Telefónica sales of telephones in the country. That was 9 years after that, no, 7 years after that. So I basically focused on growing that. We grew the business to almost 60 shops, and we were number one. And we had this big, huge UK company, retailer company on telephones, that there was always running behind us, investing a lot of money, but we were always ahead of them. So they were going public in UK, and they wanted to be leaders in Spain, so they paid a big check to become leaders in Spain, so I recover a little bit.
One more question about this multitasking. How do you avoid multitasking? Because when you have a lot of businesses, you are in many things.
It's a big, it's a big thing. That's a very personal thing. You have to be very careful with that, because if you read stories about multitasking, you will realize that when you're going multitasking, you're not focusing in any of the different tasks in which you think you're focusing. So it's basically the people you work with. I mean, for me, the secret is to have the best people you can find, and this is always very easy to say, but it is always very difficult, as you also know. Very difficult to find, because the biggest for me, the biggest failures in my experiences, the biggest failures have been the failures with people I've trusted. I mean, those people I've trusted in, that basically they didn't come back with the same amount of trust or the same amount of, you know, all what I've given them, they didn't come back with, at least with what I was suspecting with. So it's always the people you work with.
One more question before we open to the audience. Can you tell us a little bit about going public with Finca? How did it change your operations? How did it change your daily life?
It didn't really change much. I mean, I think it's been a very good experience for us, and but the company was totally ready, and in terms of reporting, we were doing the same kind of reports internally that the stock exchange was asking us, and so it hasn't. It is more the experience of being like out to the public, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knows what you're doing and why you're doing and when are you going to do it.
You have to keep explaining.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the only thing, that you become a little bit more public. But
isn't that a challenge for an entrepreneur? You know, because you are used to do your own thing without telling people, and you know, changing your mind on the go, and now you know every time you change, you have to.
But you keep doing what you want to do, because you know, basically the investors, what they do is they investing in you because they trust in what you're doing, and that's, you know, I haven't seen that press to do something I don't want to do. In fact, I've taken decisions, being public, that probably are not the right decisions from a financial point of view in the short-term view. But from my point of view, I did take those decisions because it was the right thing to do on the long-term view. And the problem you get when you get public is that you'll find a lot of people that they only go short. I mean, they only look to 1 month or 2 months because they want to make an X% on their investment. And that's not my case. I keep being the major shareholder in the company, and then I have to look on the long term. So, you know, for example, last year we didn't want to sign an agreement with a company that could made us almost 5 million euros, and we didn't do that because we had the opportunity of signing, and it is not yet sure, signing a contract with one of the 3 biggest companies in software in the world to be our partner in the video game spot, and we're still negotiating that, and it is just a chance. I mean, we're not sure at all that we're going to get that contract, but I decided not to get a sure contract with a medium-sized company to fight for this other bigger contract, because I thought we are able to get it. I mean, you never know if that was the right decision. I mean, we will know that if it was the right decision or not in a couple of months. But from my point of view, I had to take that decision. And then the financial people comes in and said, hey, come on, you should sign that contract because you said you were going to make those 5 million and you're not going to make it now. So yes, I'm not, but I can probably make triple on that if I sign the other contract. But you know, it is a chance you have to take. I am not an employee. I'm the owner of the company, and this is the thing I wanted to do. If you're not happy, the good thing of being public, if you're not happy, you can just go and sell your shares. I mean, and because we're very interested more in the value of the company and the future value of the company more than in the value of next week or in the value of next 2 months.